Good evening and welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for September 10th. Could we have the roll, please?
Tyler Robinson.
Here.
Greg Strike.
Here.
Danielle Bailey.
Here.
Jared Gardner.
Here.
Andre Spinelli.
Here.
Brian Looney.
Here.
John Spring, Mitzi Barker, and Seth Anderson have been excused. Thank you.
Thank you. We have minutes for August the 13th. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes? Thank you, Ms. Bailey, seconded by Mr. Strike. Any discussion on those minutes? Hearing none, those minutes are approved. Next up, disclosures. Jared.
I guess just that I was absent from resolution or the meeting where we discussed resolution 2018-21 and 2018-22.
So you will not be voting on those resolutions?
Correct.
Thank you. Mr. Looney.
No disclosures.
Greg.
No disclosures.
Danielle.
I was not present at the July 16th meeting where we discussed cases 2018-0075, 2018-0079. However, I have gone and listened to those cases on the record.
Great. Thank you very much. And Mr. Spinelli.
Nothing.
And I have no disclosures. Next up is the consent agenda. Could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Mr. Strike, thank you. Seconded by Ms. Bailey. Anyone wishing to pull any items on the consent agenda? Mr. Strike.
Yes, in regard to item D, that would be D1D, the resolution 2018-024. I would ask that be pulled.
Great, thank you. Any other items? Okay, in front of you is the consent agenda with items D1A, B, and C. Anyone wishing to speak to any of those items? Okay, hearing none. Any objection to those items? Hearing none, the consent agenda minus item D1D is approved. Thank you. On item D1D, Mr. Strike.
Yes, in regard to D1D, resolution 2018-024, I would move that we would reorder that to the end of tonight's meeting.
So that's the resolution pertaining to the case that we've not yet heard, so that would go after that case. Is there a second to that? Can you hit that motion? Motion to reorder. Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Looney. Any discussion? Hearing none, that resolution is reordered. So next up, there are 3 public hearing cases in front of us this evening. The procedure by which the public may speak to the Commission at our meeting is as follows. After the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, I'll ask for public testimony on the issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the Commission Rules of Procedures. That is, for petitioners, including his or her representatives, 10 minutes, and part of this time may be reserved for rebuttal. Representatives of groups, such as community councils, 5 minutes, and individuals, 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the Commission. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the Commission. An individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Planning and Zoning Commission takes except Commission recommendations to the Assembly, which are not appealable. Appeals must be filed with the Clerk's Office within 20 days after approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission of the resolution, which is the Commission's final decision. A fee for the appeal is required at time of filing. So first up is case 2018-87, Michael Quinn Construction, request for rezone from CER7 and CEPLISL to CER1A, single-family residential district zoning, generally located north of Talarick Drive, east of East Eagle River Loop Road, south of Roseberry Park Drive, and west of Cascanack Drive. Could we have the staff presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Case 2018-0087 is a request to rezone one 15.99-acre parcel from the CER7 and CEPLI zoning district to the CER1A zoning district. The Planning Department finds that the request to rezone this site meets the approval criteria of AMC 2103-160E. Standard number 1 is met. The CER1A district is intended primarily for detached single-family residential areas with gross densities up to 4 dwelling units per acre. These areas are intended to have well-developed infrastructure, and municipal services generally are intended to be provided. This rezone to the CER1A district will ensure that future subdivision plans include well-developed infrastructure, including public utilities, and protection for the existing stream located on this site. Review by the Plating Board in compliance with the regulations for subdivisions, roads, and drainage will ensure the requirements for public health, safety, and general welfare are met. Standard number 2 is met. The proposed rezone complies with the policies and land use plan map of the Chugiak Eagle River Comprehensive Plan. The subject property is designated in the plan as residential, 3 to 6 dwelling units per acre. The proposed CER1A zoning district is consistent with that density. Standard number 3 is met. The rezone is consistent with the purpose of the CER1A district, which is intended for detached single-family residential development with up to 4 dwelling units per acre. The proposed rezone satisfies guidance given in the Chugiak Eagle River Comprehensive Plan update to increase the zoning density in this area and satisfies a public policy encouraging increased residential development. Standard number 4 is met. The proposed CER1A district is compatible with surrounding zoning and development. The majority of the Brundlewood subdivision abutting the site to the south is zoned CER1A. The southeast property line has a row of existing single-family structures zoned CER7 with lot sizes of up to 20,000 square feet. This row of lots at the CER7 density is less than the density range called for in this area by the comprehensive plan. The CER7 lots are part of an existing CER1A zoned neighborhood where most homes are built on the smaller sized CER1A lots. Standard number 5 is met. The Private Development Division and Traffic Department have no objection to the proposed rezone to the CER1A district. The access to Eagle River Loop Road within 320 feet on Telerik Drive allows for minimal traffic impact to the existing subdivision. Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility, MEA, and NSTAR have the capacity to serve the number of homes this rezone could accommodate. The future subdivision of this site will require all roads, transportation, utilities, and protective services to be adequate for the proposed development. Standard number 6 is met. The proposed use is not anticipated to create any adverse impact to the natural environment of the area. The lower density CER1A zoning will minimize adverse effects on the environment while continuing to provide for residential growth. Future subdivision of the property will require 50-foot stream setbacks to be delineated to protect the stream on the site. Standard number 7 is met. The proposed rezone will not result in any adverse impact to neighboring properties. Future subdivisions of the property will require multidisciplinary approval of plans for drainage, roads, lot sizes, and infrastructure installation, ensuring that any adverse impacts will be mitigated. Standard number 8 is met. The proposed rezone does not extend or exacerbate a land use pattern that is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. The Chugiak Eagle River Comprehensive Plan designates the subject property as residential, 3 to 6 dwellings per acre. The proposed CER1A zoning district is consistent with that density requirement. Standard number 9 is met. The proposed rezone does not create a split-zoned lot. This rezone corrects an inadvertent split zoning of CEPLI and CER7 on the property. 315 public hearing notices were mailed. The Planning Department did not receive any public comment with regards to this rezone. The Eagle River Valley Community Council, the Eagle River Community Council, and Chugiak Eagle River Advisory Board were all notified of the proposed rezone. No comments were received. In conclusion, the department finds that the approval criteria are met and therefore recommends approval of this rezone from CEPLI and CER7 to CER1A. I'll be happy to answer any questions the Commission may have.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Calhoun? Okay. At this point, I'd like to open the public hearing by inviting the petitioner down. Ms. Petitioner, you're up. Please state your name for the record, and this goes for anybody testifying tonight. If you think we always benefit by a little help with how you spell your last name if it's not obvious.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Skylar Quinn. I'm a civil engineer with Rodney P. Kinney Associates. We're representing the petitioner, Michael Quinn Construction, for the rezoning of the Brendel Homestead, Track 3, from CER7 PLI to R1A. So the property is a 16-acre site. It's located east off Eagle River Loop Road. It's surrounded by the Brendel Woods subdivision to the east and south, and Roseberry Park Estates and Skyline located to the north. The reason behind the rezone is the primary reason is the 2006 Eagle River Comp Plan update. In this comp plan, a housing density of 36 dwelling units per acre was determined for the project site. For 16 acres, that's a density of 48 to 96 units. The site was always intended for development. The southern portion of the property has a 60-foot width intended for future right-of-way. There's also a water and sewer stub at the property and Talarick Drive intersection intended for future development to have city utilities. So the developer has chosen to work on the rezoning and preliminary plat simultaneously for transparency to the public as to what's planned for the site. We submitted a preliminary plat for the R1A layout to MOA on July 23rd with a hearing scheduled for October 3rd. Several neighbors reached out to us last week with questions and concerns about the project. The developer and I met with 5 families last Friday at our own time at a neighbor's house for about an hour, going over all details of the project and answering any questions that they had. So although the comp plan allows a higher density, the developer has chosen to significantly scale back housing density for a more upscale approach to appease neighbors, the communities, and the original property owners. R1A allows for a minimum lot size of 8,400 square feet. The submitted preliminary plat has 30 lots, the smallest lot being over 13,000 square feet, with the average lot being over 19,000 square feet and lot sizes going up to an acre. We believe the rezoning of the Brendel tract is in the best interest of the municipality of Anchorage and Eagle River community by providing responsible development backed by local comprehensive plan and supported by city utilities to accommodate future growth. I'd like to reserve all remaining time for rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you. You got 7 minutes, 50 seconds. Are there any questions for the petitioner? Okay, I don't see any questions at this time. At this point, I'd like to open the public hearing. Anyone who wishes to testify on the rezoning that is in front of us, which again is a recommendation to the Anchorage Assembly, please come on down. Anyone at all? All right, the rebuttal time is yours, unless you're good. You good? Okay, I'll just ask the commission, are there any other questions for the petitioner before I close the public hearing? Mr. Strike.
Yeah, question. The current zoning would allow what type of, or what density of housing currently?
Yep, go ahead. You, if not you, then staff can go, but if you want to try.
Current zoning is R7, minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet.
With a minimum lot size of 20,000?
Yes.
And that would allow you to build how many, right now your proposed is for X lots. This rezoning will provide additional, how many additional lots is the plan?
Well, hypothetically, a 16-acre site would allow, at half-acre lots, would allow for 32, not accounting for right-of-way width that have to be provided. So actually, with a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet, our preliminary plat has an average lot size of over 19,000 square feet. So we're really kind of right in the range of what it's currently zoned for.
So not much of a detriment, even though the zoning will allow you to utilize the land a little bit more efficiently, but the overall number of lots doesn't change dramatically.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strike. Mr. Looney.
On that same kind of vein, so the existing zoning, the minimum lot area would be 20,000, is that right?
Yes.
So, and you have some proposed lots that are less than that with this configuration?
That's right.
Okay.
With
But the net number of lots is about the same, within a couple.
It's similar. We didn't really dig into how an R7 layout would configure on the site, but it is very comparable to what could potentially be developed with an R7 layout, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Strike.
You mentioned that you met with some of the homeowners. What were the concerns that were raised?
Well, there was a flyer posted around the neighborhood that had false information, and They reached out to us with questions because it was the flyer presented information that was different than what I had talked to them about during the community council meeting. So that is primarily what I was addressing. The first line being that we were proposing to double the number of lots that we talked about during the community council meeting. And I assured them that our number of lots is staying the same from what we discussed then. It's that's actually the diagram that I had showed them during the community council meeting. And so there was a lot of confusion that arose throughout the neighborhood, kind of based off of some rumors that may have started.
So as part of this process, you mentioned that for transparency, that you were developing the replatting at the same time as you're going through the rezoning process, correct?
That's right. One question that people tend to have whenever you're doing a rezone is they just don't know what's going on the project site. So neighbors tend to be hesitant because of the unknown. So it worked really well for this project, saying, you know, this is what we're doing right here. This is what we're submitting. This is what we're planning on doing. We've already submitted this to MOA. So it really helps with transparency to the public by doing them side by side.
So, and this is a question to the staff. It's my understanding with that type of concurrent activity that the petitioner could have brought both the replatting and the rezoning to this commission at the same time.
Through the chair, no, Mr. Strike, you can't propose a plat for a district that doesn't exist yet. If they were proposing a rezone and a plat, and the plat could be processed under either district, that'd be fine.
Okay.
I think you're right, though, Greg. I mean, we have heard them concurrently in the past. But
Saves time,
anyway.
money, and the petitioner's
Yeah.
efforts.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, you got anything else for us?
I don't think so unless there's further questions.
I see no further questions at this point. I'd like. Yeah, so I had opened the public hearing before and nobody came down, so. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, you know, we're not going to count this as a rebuttal. I'm going to allow, she missed it, so I'm going to hear it, but stand by and you'll have a rebuttal opportunity after that, okay?
Thank you.
So in the future, we say public hearings closed. Sorry, I didn't make that clear, but that means it's time to come down and testify. Who else is wishing to testify other than this lady? Anybody else? I'd like to know. I think it's technically I was about to close the hearing, so come on down.
Thank you. I apologize for the confusion.
Yeah.
My name is Shayna Jensen. I live on Kaskanak, so my backyard essentially abuts the property. We purchased the home last year, understanding that it was a possibility that it could be developed. However, we knew at that time that it was zoned R7. The petitioner indicated that they had not reviewed what the R7 zoning would look like. They hadn't even reviewed that platting. I'm curious as to why, if there's only supposed to be 2 parcels per acre, as is allowable under R7, why that wasn't reviewed. It makes us a little uncomfortable, me and several of our neighbors, that we don't really understand that if the zoning is changed, what opportunities is available to the builder to do other than what he's committed to us. In the community council meeting, he indicated that there would be two dwellings per parcel, which is what's existing under the R7. He indicated that they were committed to retaining the character of our community by building no more than 2 acres, or 2 dwellings per acre. I also feel that this very meeting is a violation of that commitment that they made to us in that community meeting. It was quite a shock to me looking at the paperwork that they had written in that they wanted to do 3 to 6 dwellings per acre. That seems completely contradictory to what was communicated to us in that previous meeting. And I feel that this essentially robs the existing residents in that community of the character of where we've chosen to invest our lives and our well-being. So I I guess that's all that I wanted to say. Another thing is I don't understand why, I feel pretty strongly that this meeting was so difficult for some of us to attend as well. I myself have several children. It's difficult for me to get them all childcare and get them all squared away, and I feel that I feel that it was intentionally done in order to prevent us from having the opportunity to come out, because I know that several of my neighbors were not able to make arrangements to come. And that's all.
So hang tight, see if there's any questions. Brian, are you still in there? Is that from before? So I guess I wanted to address the procedural stuff first. So whenever there's anything that comes before this commission, it's at 6:30 on either the first or second Monday of the month, and there's no way around that. Now, there are different opportunities to provide comments. If not here in person, you can provide it in writing, and that would be in our packet ahead of time. I want to make sure I understand your comment, and then, of course, the petitioner has a rebuttal time that he can respond to as well. But I heard a couple of things. One was the 2 units an acre. So you're at that point referring to what the R7 would allow in 20,000 square foot lot. Is that right? Okay, so I'll let him say whether he believes, after we're done here, whether he believes the math essentially allows the same. So if you have 30 units over 16 acres, according to my math, you're 2 units an acre, right? It's kind of, that's
Right.
what that math is.
He had said it was 32. If, according to R7, he had said that would be about 32 units for the entire 16 acres. But,
If you do the math, right? If you do the math, that's what it is.
okay, that's what he had said.
But you're kind of accusing him of saying something that's not true, and I mean, that's what he's telling us here tonight, so I'm not sure what the issue is.
No, I'm saying if he committed to us to building 2 units per acre,
Right.
which is R7, why are we amending to R1A, which would allow more dwellings within the unit?
So the other thing else, you just do the math, right? You do the math of the number of units on a 16-acre tract. He's proposing here 30. Now, nothing says with his zoning, actually, our action here doesn't actually tie it to this. Under our zoning, he could actually come in and do more units.
And that's my concern.
Yep. So he could change unless we specifically tie this action to that particular plat. The plat shows 30 units. The other thing is, are you familiar with a comprehensive planning document? So when you said when you purchased your lot, you looked at the surrounding zoning. So the other thing to sort of be, and it's not always readily apparent, but we have a comprehensive plan that we adopt by the Anchorage Assembly, and in it has a land use plan. And on this tract, it showed a density of 3 to 6 units an acre.
I was not aware of that, no.
Yeah, so it's obviously not something that all realtors are aware of or anything along those lines, and so you have to go the extra mile for due diligence. But this has been designated this way, I believe, since 2006.
But not zoned that way, is that correct?
But not zoned.
Okay.
So in planning speak, what that means is it's designated for higher density, but it hasn't been implemented. So it hasn't gone through the rezoning or the platting process, but it's the community sort of designating that, hey, in the future as this develops, it's likely to develop at a higher density than what exists today. Does that make sense?
And to say, I don't think that the community, meaning the neighbors, would agree to designate it that way.
Well, the community, meaning the community of Eagle River, in fact, did decide when the comprehensive plan was passed to adopt it, and that's how that works. I totally recognize that your neighbors were not likely involved directly in that process, but the community in 2006 decided that that's what it ought to be. So I just want to be clear with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and apologize for the time, that the time is not convenient to you, but thanks for your testimony here this evening.
Thank you.
Yeah. At this point, I'd like the petitioner to come down, and if you have additional rebuttal, please let us know.
I think you clarified the 16-acre and the density with the R7 zoning during that, but I just want to clarify one more time that we are doing exactly what we stated during our community council meeting with the 30 lots. That layout that was displayed and I showed to everyone is exactly what we're doing. So no further comments.
Yep, a question from Mr. Looney, and then Mr. Gardner.
This is to follow up with my previous question and to clarify the previous testimony, but essentially with the existing zoning, you would be limited to about 20,000 square foot per lot, which would be 30 to 32 lots for this parcel. But the proposed zoning is you'd have almost the same number of lots. Why go through the hassle? Is it just so you have the flexibility to have some larger lots and some smaller lots to fit the topography, or why you're doing this?
That is part of it. You can see it's a pretty odd geometry here. Everything around it has been developed, and this is kind of what we're left with. But one thing that or another big reason behind this is the utilities. With R1A, you have city, water, and sewer, and there's a water and sewer stub right at that intersection. And we wanted to stick with kind of the way the rest of everything is developed around there by using public utilities, curb and gutter, street lights, all the improvements that are required with an R1A subdivision.
Okay, yeah, that's huge. So the utilities, although you always have the option of using piped water and sewer with R7, you're essentially saying that you want to rezone so that these public water and sewer are required?
We would like to take advantage of the public utilities that are in place, yes, as well as the other improvements, such as sidewalk, curb and gutter.
Okay.
Mr. Gardner?
Oh, Commissioner Looney addressed my question.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, thank you. Now I'm going to close the public hearing. All right, the public hearing is closed. Could I get a motion related to case 2018-87? Mr. Looney.
Okay, here we go. So in the case of 2018-0087, to rezone the 16 acres from CE R7 to CE R1A, I move that we approve the rezoning.
Thank you, Mr. Looney. Seconded by Ms. Bailey. Go ahead, Mr. Looney. You can speak to your motion.
I guess we find that the rezoning meets the established criteria and first all the different categories, all 9 categories. I guess the easiest thing to see, I guess, is it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. I will say that a condition of this may have to be that it's tied to this proposed plat, I guess, because I will say that with this rezoning, they really could come in with a different plat with a whole different lot configuration, although this doesn't appear to be their intention now. But for the plat that I see in front of me is what the public wants, and I think is appropriate for what they're trying to do. So I guess that would be one condition would probably have to be for this zoning approval.
So so just to be clear, your main motion does not do anything to tie this to the proposed plat. Are you suggesting that you don't support the motion unless it is? Acknowledging that, a lot can change in the platting process. I mean, it's not just someone could suddenly come in and double the density, which I find highly unlikely personally, but there are technical reasons to modify lots and.
Yeah, I don't really want to tie it to that specific, exact layout, but I'd like to think that, the public's trust was gained. 40 people showed up to the meeting, but they are comfortable with the plan that's proposed based on what was presented to them, a conceptual layout of these lots.
Okay.
So I guess I'd like to tie it to the concept of what we see. It doesn't have to be the exact layout, but the concept of about 30 lots.
So, and I got other people in the queue, but I would just simply say, it's a great point. I would have it would have been good to ask him what his thought is, and I would be open to, if you're going to go there, hear from him. I still believe that that's appropriate if you're going to. We don't have to do it now until there's actually a motion that's debated or put forth. But let me hear from Ms. Bailey first, and then Mr. Spinelli.
I'm not going to address what appears to be a side motion at this time because I'm not sure if it will eventually be proposed, but I'll be supporting the motion as stated. I believe there were some community concerns. However, this area was seems very appropriately marked for a rezone. Specifically, I think an important factor is the shape of the property, and that if we are going to promote all the approval criteria, one being conforms to the comprehensive plan, including the comprehensive plan maps, and increasing and providing housing density and providing housing, that really can't be provided without flexibility in those plats in this area. And so I think that itself makes it appropriate. Again, I also wanted to point out approval criteria number 5, along with this being a good opportunity to plug this area into the utilities in the area. I also wanted to draw attention to the fact that there would be very minimal traffic impact on the surrounding area. And so by providing these housing units, the fact that it doesn't also provide a traffic burden on the area is important for maintaining the character of the neighborhoods that are already there. That, along with the fact that it does have a very similar housing density, would be another reason why I'd be approving the motion as stated.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Mr. Spinelli.
Yeah, I'd support the original motion as is. I think it's consistent with the comp plan and plan to support it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Spinelli. Anyone else wishing to speak to the main motion or provide an amendment to the motion? Mr. Looney, I'm about to call the question. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, am I allowed to amend my own motion?
Yes, you can. If you have a second and we vote on it. So.
Yeah, I think I will. I do think that it is important, like I stated earlier, that
Why don't you state the motion first, and then you can speak to it.
I move that we, as one of the conditions of the approval, that we require that the parcel layout as presented by the petitioner will be followed through with the plat. I'm not sure exactly what terminology to say there, but we don't have to have the exact lot layout, but from about 30 lots is what the development appears to be, and I think that's what we're looking for.
So let me just, before I ask for a second, could we work on this a little bit? Is the motion that you'd like to see that it be restricted to no more than 30 lots, or no more than 30 lots and a layout as generally depicted in the preliminary plat provided for us tonight?
I guess I'd be okay with just the number of lots. As far as the actual configuration, it's not as that's something that the petitioner has much better handle than I do. But I think what the public's concern is, we only heard from one here tonight, but I'm guessing that they're mostly concerned about density.
So let's do this. Let's see if you have a second. So I think that it would be better if your motion just simply stated no more than 30 lots.
No more than 30 lots.
So could you hit your motion button there? And let's see if you have a second. Is there a second to Mr. Looney's motion to amend to create a limit of 30 lots as part of the rezoning? Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Gardner. We've heard from Mr. Looney. I'd like to hear from Mr. Spinelli and then Mr. Strike. You been there from before? Yeah, but I can say something. Go ahead. I can't remove you from the thing, so you got to, yeah.
I don't plan to support the amendment. I think it clusters the actual zoning. I could see ways where a guy could come in and subdivide the thing into 2 tracks, putting 29 small units on one of the tracks and leaving the big track for 1 unit. So you could still get the type of development that you're trying to, special limitation out of just by doing that. I don't think it's a clean way to do it. I realize that you are creating this possible problem, but I'd say we ask staff if there's a cleaner way to do it, but I know that when we've seen other cases that have zoning like this, it's become a mess in the future, and I just don't plan to support it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Strike.
Yes, thank you, and through the chair. If appropriate, can we ask the petitioner what they think of that amendment?
I said I would be willing to do it, so I'd like to hear, it's a big deal, so we're open to say, hey, what are your thoughts if there was a limit on the lots?
would oppose those special limitations on the property. This is what we're planning on doing. This is what's been submitted. There's been a significant amount of money invested in this, but this is still early on in the process. And they could potentially, let's say, for whatever reason, want a cul-de-sac to lengthen out longer. Or there's several changes that could take place that could alter it. It would make it very difficult on us. Where the comp plan provides 48 to 96 units, 30 units is well below what is in the comp plan. I don't see the reasoning as to why special limitations for 30 lots would need to take place on this.
And since it was my question put forth too, for the transparency in doing the platting and being concurrent with that activity, you came forth and spoke that here's our intent and to be totally transparent. Now I'm listening to you and you're saying, well, I don't have to be totally transparent. I can change my mind later because the zoning allows me to go up to whatever, 45, 50 lots. So which is it?
We are being totally transparent, but if something were to happen, we'd start the process over again. We'd still have to give a community council meeting on a new layout, and it would restart everything. We are being completely transparent. This is what we're planning on doing. This is what's submitted.
I'm actually not sure you would have to go back to a community council meeting.
Well,
This-
if they submitted a new application.
And I can tell you, just based off of the transparency that we've had with the public so far, us meeting with them on our own time, the developer handing out a cell phone number to everyone in the neighborhood, we would do that. If there was a big change, we would feel the need to go before the community council.
We heard your question. I mean, you heard where they stand on it. I mean, that's fine. So we appreciate that.
Hi, I'm Mike Quinn, and I just want to throw in also, the fact that we haven't gone to platting yet, and you don't know what's going to happen there. I would hate to be putting limits on this right now that might have to change because of the platting process. I fully intend to develop this the way we've got it laid out, but the fact that we don't know what the city's going to request us to do, it would be limiting it. And what if something happened that would, they would force us to create another area that we'd need for whatever, dewatering or whatever, but there's things that go through my mind that think there's a possibility of something happening that then would be in conflict with what your amendment is.
So
that's my only problem.
But an increase in unit would be in conflict with what you told the community.
Well, it would only be because the city required it.
They're not going to require more units, though.
Huh?
That's what I'm not quite understanding the logic. They're not going to require that you build more units.
Well, they wouldn't. I'm not saying more units, but maybe you'd need to separate out a designated area that would be considered another lot or another tract or something. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that come into conflict with the amount of lots that you've dictated?
Mm-hmm. If it was lots, if it was units, it would be done. Okay. Thank you for your feedback, for answering that question. I think it's fair when you're proposing a relatively significant special limitation that we hear from the petitioner, so I appreciate that. Mr. Strike, any further comments on the motion to amend? Mr. Gardner.
Just with respect to what community council meeting, what process would be required if they did want to change the plan, I don't know that I fully captured what that would look like, so I don't know if staff is able to.
So maybe Ms. Calhoun, or could you, would there be any reason that they would go back to a community, or be required to go back to the community council?
With a long plat, if they change the preliminary plat layout, they would have to go back to the community council and redo their public hearing.
Anything other than a minor change to the plat itself?
Correct.
Okay. You good, Mr. Gardner? Yeah. So we have in front of us a motion to amend. I think the motion was stated as 30 lots. That's the motion on the table. I ask that we please vote on the motion to amend the main motion. That motion fails. We're back to the main motion. Anyone else wishing to speak to the main motion? Mr. Strike, then Mr. Gardner.
We understand that the platting has not been formalized and approved. We've got a preliminary platting here. This commission has heard platting in conjunction with rezoning concurrently. Can this platting come back before this commission?
No, the application's already been made to the platting board.
Thank you.
Mr. Gardner.
I intend to support the motion, and I'm sensitive to the point that Commissioner Looney raised regarding the expectations that the community had here, and I think to the extent that we've seen relatively, at least present here and understanding that not everyone was able to make it, but relatively limited opposition from the community to this, I think that's reflected in the understanding that they received from the developer. And so I recognize and appreciate that concern, but I think I'll still support it given the understanding that if there is a significant change to this plat, that's something that would need to be then presented to the community again, and they would have an opportunity at that time to comment and give their feedback.
To comment on the plat at that point, presuming that the rezoning has been completed.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And I'll remind people that this, what we do here this evening is to make a recommendation to the Assembly that all rezonings are not finalized until they go to the Assembly. So with that, I'd like to call the question. Please vote on the main motion to approve the rezoning as indicated in the staff packet. That rezoning is approved. Thank you for your testimony. We're going to move on to the next case. Case 2018-89 is a request to rezone from B3SL and R2M to B3SL, roughly 2 acres, generally located east of Muldoon Road, south of East 14th Avenue, west of Carolyn Circle, and north of East 16th. At this point, I'd like to hear the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The petitioner is in the audience today, and this is a request to rezone 4 lots, of which 2 are split zoned B3SL and R2M. The property owner is requesting to eliminate the split zoning and modify the special limitations to allow more vehicle service and repair than is currently allowed by those special limitations on the property, the B3SLs. The Northeast Community Council passed a resolution supporting the rezoning, subject to 2 special limitations. They are bringing the developed lots up to new code requirements and limiting the number of vehicles parked outdoors overnight. The Community Council's resolution can be found on page 22 of your packet. In regards to approval criteria 1, the proposed rezoning to B3SL conforms to the comprehensive plan and fixes the existing split zoning on 2 of those lots, which make for more efficient use of the land. This rezoning allows slightly more commercial uses than were previously permitted because it amends the existing special limitations that were based on the old code. The rezone promotes the general welfare by supporting the vitality of an existing business within the Muldoon commercial corridor. In regards to approval criteria number 2, the site is identified as a town center in Anchorage 2020, the East Anchorage District Plan, and Anchorage 2040. Policies 4, 7, 14, and 21 of Anchorage 2020 are met with the proposed rezoning. In regards to approval criteria number 3, the B3 district is intended primarily for general commercial uses in commercial centers and areas exposed to heavy traffic. And then further along in that purpose statement, it says, while B3 district areas shall continue to meet the needs for auto-related and other auto-related uses, is the municipality's intent that the B3 district also shall provide for safe and convenient personal mobility in all forms. Approval criteria number 4, this rezoning resolves the existing split zoning. The general area contains the diversity of commercial, residential, and parkland uses, and the proposed zoning is consistent with those uses. The land to the north is the East 14th Avenue right-of-way, unbuilt right-of-way. And then there's the Chester Creek in its own tract of land, and then there's the Chatsnoo Park. The land to the south of the property and east of the petition site are commercial. The land to the west of the petition site is multifamily residential. New Title 21 code requires specific site design elements like pedestrian walkway to Muldoon Road and site perimeter landscaping where abutting residential districts. Approval criteria number 5, the petition site is within ARDSA and has access to Muldoon Road and East 14th Avenue right-of-way. Approval criteria number 6, all uses will have to comply with the noise control ordinance and the clean air ordinance, the regulations in Title 15. Approval criteria number 7, the new Title 21 code has district-specific standards, use-specific standards, landscape requirements that are more restrictive than the old code and are intended to make permitted commercial uses more compatible with less intense uses like multifamily residential and the park. For example, the new code requires L2 buffer landscaping between the B3 district and the R2M district to the east. The petitioner has offered 2 special limitations aimed at making the B3 district compatible with its neighbors. They are, there shall be a permanent L2 buffer landscaping along the east property boundary and a permanent L1 visual enhancement landscaping buffer along Muldoon Road. Also, the second special limitation is to prohibit major engine, transmission, differential repair or replacement, body, fender, and upholstery work and painting. The first special limitation mirrors the new Title 21 code site perimeter landscape requirements. The second special limitation allows Balthazar Tire Shop to do tire repair, wheel alignment, brake service, and auto glass replacement, which are currently prohibited by the special limitations that exist on the split zone property. These types of light automotive repair services are classified as vehicle service and repair minor. Let's see. Approval criteria 8, this rezoning is consistent with the East Anchorage District Plan and Anchorage 2040. And approval criteria 9, this rezoning will eliminate the existing split zoning on 2 lots. The department's recommending approval of this rezoning to B3 SL subject to the special limitations on page 7 of your packet, and the following 2 pages are a draft assembly ordinance for this rezoning. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and again, the petitioner is here in the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spinelli, question.
My question was the special limitations recommended by the Community Council, and I was just curious what the department thought of those when considering this.
Well, we always take the Community Council's comments very seriously. We think that, look, the existing special limitations came forth because there's not a lot of protections in the old code when you have B3 commercial property adjoining a residential zoning district. This rezoning will update the special limitations to come into compliance with the new code, so that's a kind of a cleanup effect of this rezoning. But let's see, the special limitations, one of them was that they didn't want overnight parking. They wanted to limit overnight parking. Okay, the Northeast Community Council requested the property be brought up to the new Title 21 Code B3 requirements, and that the amount of vehicles parked outside and overnight be limited. With the special limitations proposed by the petitioner, these 2 issues are resolved. First, the new code site perimeter landscaping requirements will require new landscaping be installed where abutting the residential district. Second, the number of vehicles parked outside and overnight will be limited because major vehicle service and repair will continue to be prohibited. Major repair necessitates keeping vehicles on site for multiple days, whereas minor vehicle repair does not. Minor vehicle repair services typically have same-day drop-off and pickup. Furthermore, off-street parking is a permitted by right use in the B3 district, and no other commercial zoning district along Muldoon Commercial Corridor limits overnight parking. So I think that the community seeking to limit the number of cars parked overnight was maybe a visual thing, but you can have 24-hour. I mean, you can have in the B3 district, it's a permitted by right use just to have a parking lot, so that they could park cars there or have a car sales lot or anything anywhere else up and down Muldoon Road. So it's a bit of an odd request, but we think that, the special limitation offered by the petitioner goes a long ways towards achieving that request from the community, because if they eliminate some of those major auto repair activities, then they'll have fewer cars parked overnight. Essentially, if they're still continuing to do, if they're going to do, tire changes, but they're not doing major engine repair, then there'll be fewer cars parked on the lot overnight, because the types of activities that they're doing tend to be drop off and pick up same day, as opposed to parked overnight.
Okay, Ms. Bailey.
Can you be more specific on what you, the requirements of number 1 are, specifically L1 visual enhancement and L2 buffer landscaping? What that would be more specifically?
Yeah, I can do that. Let's see here. All right. There is a table in Chapter 7 of Title 21. It's on Chapter 7, page 7-63. And in that table, it describes what is visual enhancement landscaping and what is buffer landscaping. So buffer landscaping, which would be required by the special limitation where abutting the residential district to the east, they would have to have a minimum average planting bed width of 15 feet, with a minimum width of at any point not less than 10 feet. And they have to provide 2 trees and 6 shrubs per 20 linear feet along the property line. At a minimum, half of all trees shall be coniferous. They have to distribute the trees evenly. All areas have to be covered by a mulch. So there's a description of that landscape standard, and that's what is applied by the new code everywhere. So that's kind of the standard that the communities adopted with the new code.
And as a follow-up, there is currently not a buffer between the B3 and the R3 because it's a split zone lot and because of it was a previously adopted. So this would be an addition of a buffer that we don't currently have.
That's right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Looney.
Yeah, I have a question about the parking limitation. One of the conditions is the intent to limit the vehicles parked in a on their lot or actually on 14th Avenue. And is 14th Avenue, are vehicles parked there, and is that a concern with the neighborhood?
Through the chair, Mr. Looney, 14th Avenue is not constructed. The petitioner is nobody's using it's unbuilt. It's unbuilt right-of-way, and there's no parking there, and there's nothing. The property is not being used.
And to be clear, Mr. Looney, the Northeast Community Council on page 23 has their resolution, and we might be hearing from someone from the Northeast Community Council, maybe not, but the resolution, their resolution was there to be a prohibition on the number of vehicles parked outside. It was not specific, but just said that. There's nothing in the proposed special limitations that limit the number of cars to be parked there. Just to be clear, what I heard from Mr. McLaughlin is that by eliminating the ability to do this major engine transmission work, we're somehow dealing with that. I would sort of put out there that there's nothing that would prevent them from having a used car lot on this lot. I mean, there's a number of other uses that would have all kinds of different parked car situations, but it would be a different use. Ms. Bailey.
Withdrawn.
And just to follow up on the number 1 SL, so is that special limitation needed then, or is the provision already in code?
We believe that it's useful because we're going to use it to require them to install landscaping in the spring. Because it'll take a few months for this rezone to go to the assembly and have a decision. Should it be adopted, that special limitation will be the hook to
the special limitation allows you to enforce the zoning, whereas otherwise it would require them coming in for a building permit and at that point actually being required to do something. I gotcha.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Strike.
Yes, thank you. On the resolution, I'm reading here, one of the conditions was the property be brought up to current B3 standards. Can you elaborate on what maybe I missed it, but what needs to be brought up to standards to be B3?
Well, so the new code has many requirements that the old code did not, and the special limitation to install landscaping would bring the already existing built properties up to new code landscaping requirement.
Which your recommendation number 1 addresses.
Yeah. The walkway requirement, that's going to be handled under the building permit. So they've got one building on 4 lots right now. So the second building that's being built will be built compliant with the new code. So what we're talking about, of the 4 lots, only one of them is sort of non-conforming in terms of new code. Now, your question is, so what's the difference between the way it is now and the way it would be under new code? There is a requirement to build a fence. There's this landscape requirement. Currently, the property is devoid of landscaping. And there's a requirement for the walkway. It's kind of hard to take a look at the property and see all the ways that it's out of compliance. It's possible that maybe the dumpster, I don't think they have a dumpster, but maybe the dumpster's not screened or something. So there's Chapter 7 is quite long. It's,
just to be careful, they're not necessarily out of compliance.
Right.
They're an older existing use, right? So it's a different, careful with the language there.
And so I'm looking at the resolution that was done, and are you comfortable that those requests by the subject resolution, we're looking at the same resolution? I'm looking at the Belisar, the Northeast Community Council resolves. Are we confident that we're addressing their concerns in your recommendations and or through the process for the building permit?
Yeah, I think we do. With these issues of a commercial property and a residential property and existing structures, what it usually comes down to is buffering.
Okay.
The neighbors want to see the buffering. I've had a lot of discussion with the community council president, Christy Wood, and by some of the concerned neighbors. And, I think that some people may just never be satisfied, because there's longstanding histories between properties and that. But I think that this rezoning is a tool to clean up the property. The way I talked with some of the folks is that you would want to see this rezone be adopted because what you would get is a 15-foot landscape buffer there and, the elimination of the split zoning and more efficient use of the property.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions for staff. At this point, I'd like to open the public hearing, beginning with the petitioner. Come on down. And if you could, state your name. If you'd like any time reserved for rebuttal, let us know how much.
Yes, several minutes. My name is Baltazar.
Could you just bring the mic close so we can hear it?
Yeah,
Yep.
my name is Baltazar, and I just want to ask for rezoning that we're going to eliminate the B3, the 2RM in the B3, because the back part of the property is not in use. And we write to the Northeast Community Center, and Chief had 2 concerns. And then last month, August 17, we meet again with them to address the concern they have, and I present to them that we are going to put landscaping buffer, and we are limited what we do over there, like a no major repair. And they felt pretty comfortable about it, though. So I feel the issue with the Northeast Community Center was resolved. And I'm in the back, and that lady, she's there. She represents the Northeast Community Center, and I would like to speak to see how the community feel about rezoning. That way you can see truly what the people in the neighborhood feel about the rezoning about my business.
Great. Thank you. Mr. McLaughlin?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think Mr. Baltazar was trying to say, and what I think is a good point, is he could have sought to rezone the property and eliminate the special limitations, but his purpose from the very beginning was to do the minimum amount of change to the zoning that would make it possible to do some of the additional activities on his property that he wants to do. So rather than seek to eliminate the SLs, which he could have requested and would be, conforming to our comprehensive plan, instead he offered up special limitations, and he was trying to, I guess, ruffle as few feathers as possible, if that makes sense. Thanks.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to invite members of the public down for the public hearing. Remind you, if you're part of a group, representing a group, you can have 5 minutes, an individual 3.
Okay, well, this will bring
Don't start talking to us until we hear you in the mic, because we won't be able to pick anything up. So, and you can take your time setting up if you want to. You can put it in front if you want, but what I'll say is, while you talk about it, you have to have the mic, or we lose you on the recording. Science fair project. So remember, I'm not going to consider any of your testimony until you start on the mic. So probably either on or to the side. It's got to get a little bit. There you go. Well, then I would recommend that halfway through your testimony, you spin it.
You can grab the mic.
Yeah. Or you can ask for a volunteer down there to help you. There's 4 people that might be willing to provide some, assistance here. Maybe even Mr. Baltasar. I don't know.
I don't think so.
He might help you.
No. Not yet.
Don't spin it yet. Okay.
Sit down. I'll give you a cue.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
Yep. So ma'am, your name for the record.
Okay. And then how long do I get to talk?
Depend. Are you representing a group or an individual?
Well, my husband and I own the building next door.
So just as an individual. So you get 3 minutes.
That's it.
When this little light goes off in the middle, you got 1 minute left. So that's your little hint. It goes by fast.
Okay, my name is Fran Gregren, and we own the building next door to Baltazar. So back when this all started, 10 years ago, none of you were on this committee, but maybe you were. So anyway, I have problems with it because he does not conform to code at all. In fact, you can see that on some of these pages and pictures, his landscaping was right here. The twigs, they were dead. That's his landscaping. We no longer have that landscaping. What we have is connexes. We had to put a $3,000 guardrail up because he had to go drive his trucks across our property. And, I don't have any problem with trying to be nice to him, but he doesn't conform to the code at all. And that's been 10 years of frustration. Now, I've been to the Northeast Community Council, and they're nice people, but they don't have to see this every day. And consequently, we don't have our tenants in our building because they look at this stuff and they say, what's that all about? And then I call code enforcement occasionally, and they say, well, I guess he's okay, but nothing gets done. And I don't know if any of you would like to have a building next door to this kind of operation. And the frustrating part is because Jerry Weaver was there when I would go in and talk to him, and now Jerry Weaver has been representing Mr. Baltazar at the community council. And I just feel like there's no way around this. Yes, I wouldn't mind him being a good neighbor and cleaning this up, but some of these pictures, this was yesterday, this was Sunday, and this is what it looks like. So how are we going to clean that up? Do you think we're going to conform to the new code? I don't think so.
And, you know, Mr. McLaughlin, I was in talking to you, and you said you couldn't talk to me about anything, and I understand now because you're kind of trying to help this. I do believe you live in East Anchorage also. And Muldoon gets a bad rap, and it's because of stuff like this, you know. Now, on this part here, there's some, let's see, it's the new park. I don't know if you could see that one.
Yep, we see it.
It's at the bottom.
Okay, and then the foothills, scenic park foothills or scenic foot. Now, why can't he do something like that? I mean, you can hide those connexes, you can make it look good, you can put your landscaping in. I don't understand why 10 years of frustration and now we're going to get rid of the special limitations, we're going to give him carte blanche.
So, thank you. Can you spell your last name for us? And there might be questions for you, so hang tight. What's your last name?
Gregorin.
Can you spell it for me?
Gregorin.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Gregorin? Mr. Strike.
Let me see if I can get through this. So what I'm seeing you describe here are some code violations, not zoning issues. And the zoning that we're seeing here is to bring the zoning forward with limitations to create buffers and so forth to clean up. So this new action here, from what I'm reading here, is actually to clean up part of what you're seeing from visual, but it doesn't necessarily address code issues. Right now, we're here to review zoning, a change in the zoning, and as such, a special limitation for certain buffering areas that would be required. So I'm not sure.
So let me help, Mr. Strike. So what is your property zoned?
B3.
B3. So right now, the special limitations are between this property and Muldoon Road and residential properties, not her property that's a B3 property. And to that, I would ask, is there any requirement to provide landscaping between properties along in the B3?
There's not a landscape requirement between two B3 properties unless there is parking along that lot line.
What if there's a storage of numerous connexes and outdoor equipment and material?
Well, Mr. Baltazar knows that he needs to clean up his property.
But wait a minute. How does he know that? Is there a zoning enforcement against it?
He needs to do some cleaning up the property. That's just discussions that we've had. But in terms of code violations,
if there's been no zoning infraction, then you can say all day long, "Hey, clean it up." But if we heard testimony accurately, there's no requirement by the municipality. There's no active case right now of zoning infraction or code enforcement.
No, I don't believe so. I didn't check with code enforcement. I might have checked with code enforcement, but the connexes are permitted in the rear of your property in a commercial zoning district.
And you're not required to then. So somehow we landscape between parked cars and parking lots, but not between connexes.
Well, Mr. Chair, look, there's site perimeter landscaping required between different zoning districts and between different uses. And there is a parking lot perimeter landscaping that's required between parking and your neighbor. The connexes that exist in the rear of the property are not a violation of anything in new or old code. I think that the building that he's building and some of the upgrades he's trying to make to the property, I guess. Allow for the possibility of eliminating some of those connexes. There's a problem in the park with people coming in and homeless people coming in and stealing things from his property, and so the connexes have been functional.
It just was a simple question. If you have a connex, do you have to landscape it? You said no. Thank you. Anybody, Mr. Stryker, are you still in there from before? Have you made code complaints in the past? You said you had.
Yes, because he not only does this, which I guess should be under code compliance, maybe not. But he does things that, like, he was doing glazing, replacing windshields, and doing oil changes and things that weren't in the code. I guess what happened years ago is they let him, it slipped through the Muni, and so they thought they could help him out by letting him go ahead and stay there. I think it was a XXX, was it? Was it XXX that you bought? So they figured an auto body, or not an auto body, but an oil and lube, whatever you're, what is it you're supposed to do?
Well, ma'am, just make the testimony. I mean, we'll
Okay,
figure that out.
anyway, he doesn't do what he's supposed to do, and so I guess I lost my train of thought now, I'm sorry, but
this action allows him to expand what he's doing now to the full coverage of the lot outside of a buffer landscape. You are aware of that.
right, and that's why I think that there should be strict limitations on this rezoning, because we're just going to get more of the same. I mean, I've had 10 years of this.
Okay, Ms. Bailey, you have a question?
I guess I'm curious on what limitations you think would be appropriate, because it sounds like currently one of the things that is problematic is that there are not, like you mentioned, the other communities that have that better buffer and that better visualization buffer. However, one of the special limitations of this rezone, if we approve it, is that they have to have visual enhancement landscaping along Muldoon Road and where abutting residential zoning. And then the second one is you mentioned that they were doing body work, which they weren't currently zoned for. And another special limitation on this rezone is for major engine, is that major engine transmission, differential repair, replacement, body fender, upholstery work, and painting are prohibited. And so it would prohibit, it sounds like, those uses that you don't think they should be doing. And so I'm wondering what other special limitations do you think are necessary to make the R3 property a B3?
Well, the way he parks cars there, they did have him eliminate some of the cars overnight, and I know that's what the Northeast Community Council has a big issue with it. But it's all open fencing, you know, it's not open, but chain link, and it's broken in spots and that. So that could invite people that shouldn't be in that area, you know, to get in there. So it just needs to be a little tighter and a lot cleaner and environmentally better. I mean, I don't know where the oil goes or what happens to it, and that's probably not my area. That's what code should do, but it seems like it's real loose in his operation. So I'm just voicing my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Christy, are you intending to testify?
Hello, my name is Christy Wood, and I am here on behalf of the Northeast Community Council. I'm not the president, but I too chair the Parks Committee. I apologize for the poorly worded resolution. I did pen that. It was not my finest moment. That resolution was essentially a compromise that we were looking for. Staff did an excellent job of trying to relay our concerns. It's not always easy to read the Northeast Community Council, but I thought he did a pretty good job recapping it. We do have a lot of concerns historically with the property, one of which there were some potential code violations. He was offering oil changes for many years. He wasn't zoned for it. We did send letters of concern to code enforcement regarding the property. We also do question some of the information in this packet. I don't think it's cut and dried that automotive repair is appropriate in a town center. I did, in fact, find a memo from the planning division that states those exact same concerns, specifically in regards to Baltazar's tire shop, suggesting that automotive repair is not really compatible in town use. So where does that put the community council? Because his shop is providing services that the community needs, and he is employing a lot of people, and we do want to support our small businesses. That's very important to the council. So that poorly worded resolution was kind of a compromise. We are concerned about what might happen someday if Mr. Baltazar sells his shop and the next person comes in. If there were no special limitations and they were allowed complete B3, that would potentially expand the uses way beyond what we're already not quite comfortable with. So really what we were searching for was a limitation on major auto repair. And I am a little concerned about the packet we received where it said, quote, all allowed B3 uses except some major vehicle repair. I'm a little worried about the word some. We're comfortable with minor auto repair. It is in essence what he's been doing. Although one does have to speak to the concerns that, you know, if there were code violations, should we really update the zoning to allow him to do things that maybe he shouldn't have been doing? I mean, one does have to ask that question. But that being said, because we do want to support our small businesses, as long as there was a restriction on major auto, I think we'd be comfortable with that. It's just that little word some has us a little bit concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gardner, question?
Yeah, I was just curious where you're reading the word some. I wasn't following it.
Well, we got this packet, and first page, proposed use, if any, all allowed B3 uses except some major vehicle repair. This is the application for zoning map amendment.
Okay. I think I got that. But someone can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding of the recommended special limitations is that major engine, transmission, differential repair, replacement, body fender, upholstery work, and painting are prohibited flatly. So as I'm reading it, and I think others are as well, that would prohibit that type of repair as a blanket statement.
Okay. Then we would be comfortable with that as long as it was all major auto. That was what we were shooting for in the poorly penned resolution. We were just trying to prevent a lot of junked cars piling up around the property for a long period of time.
Okay. And then I was also going to ask, which may be what you were just referring to there, what the basis of the concern regarding parked vehicles outside and overnight parking was.
Yeah, because we weren't familiar with the technical differences, although I had read Title 21 and the differences between major and minor, I was just shooting for something that prevents it from looking like an auto body shop with, you know, lots of junked vehicles piling up. As you can see, aesthetics are important to some of our community members, and we would really like to see Muldoon cleaned up. And so we were just trying to shoot for a way to try to keep it looking nice.
Okay. So just to make sure I understand, so the parking concern goes to that question about the type of auto body or type of auto repair that's
Yes,
permissible?
and I do believe if there was a restriction on all major auto, that would speak to our concern, just as staff pointed out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm a little bit confused at why the special limitation talks about major engine transmission. I mean, our uses in the code talk about vehicle service and repair minor and vehicle service and repair major. Or what we're saying is we're not allowing vehicle service and repair major?
Rather than rely on the use types or use categories that are in code, instead we specifically called out the exact things that he's prohibited from doing so that it was clear and there was no confusion. That seemed to work best for the situation.
Okay. Ms. Wood, so what is immediately on the north side of the 14th right-of-way?
That would be our park, right?
Yeah.
If I'm thinking north.
I believe it would be.
Right.
It's the stream. It's the stream. It's a stream tract.
Oh, sorry. Yes, the new stream.
And then the park.
Yes, he is correct. It's the stream and then the parking lot for the park.
Stream meaning the creek?
Yeah, where the Chester Creek got moved to go directly underneath the road instead of making the 90-degree turns through the intersection.
So you realize that this special limitation that's proposed really only affects a very short amount of the lot frontage. If you look at their lot frontage, it's a big, long, rectangular lot. And the only place where we're dealing with landscaping is on the Muldoon frontage, not on the 14th right-of-way side.
Understood. Yeah.
Nor on, and only on the little portion that's R2M on the other side, right? So the whole B3 on that side and the whole, so he could expand his current use to the entire perimeter of that lot and only have a buffer on 20% of the lot.
I think that's really important that you pointed that out because I don't think that we were, aware of that. Of course, we would like things to be beautiful so that when people are in the park, they don't turn and see, a broken chain link fence and then an auto body shop.
How much money has been raised for this community park thus far?
Well, Phase 2 alone has probably $1.2 million.
Would you say it's one of the most positive things that's happened to Muldoon in a long time?
That and the farmer's market. It's amazing to watch the community blossom in this park. It's been incredible.
So let me read vehicle service repair minor. An establishment engaged in light maintenance activities such as engine tune-ups, oil change, lubrication, carburetor cleaning, muffler replacement, brake repair, car washing, tire shops, detailing, and polishing. Vehicle parts are sold and are ordinarily installed on the premises. So maybe some of those fall into major engine transmission differential repair, but maybe not. I don't see muffler indicated. Is a muffler a major engine issue? I mean, or are we basically allowing everything that's under vehicle service and repair minor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I think that for perspective, it would be helpful to point out some information. So there are 4 properties involved, and only one is developed currently. That's the southernmost. The southernmost. There's a smaller lot to the west and north, which is being developed currently. That'll be developed to the new code. The 2 lots to the north, which are abutting 14th Avenue, which you referred to, they will be required, regardless of anything, any development, per this table, the table of landscaping, they will be required to provide L1 visual enhancement landscaping along that unbuilt right-of-way. That's just a zoning requirement to place that. So they're undeveloped properties, they're vacant. It's just a dirt lot with nothing on it. When it gets built one day, as you said, if he expands his business, he doesn't own them, but say he acquires them from the current owner, if he were to expand his business, there would be requirement, everything in the new code would be thrust upon him, including L1 visual enhancement.
I understand. I'm actually sort of surprised that you have to put landscaping on an unbuilt right-of-way, but if you think, as long as it's right-of-way, you do. But I'm surprised by the mislogic there. If the logic is that you have to require it specifically as a special limitation for the residential portion and the Muldoon portion, because you want to be able to rely on this to enforce it, why does the same not hold true on the north boundary, which is adjacent to the Muldoon Town Square Park?
Because they're undeveloped lots which will have to install that landscaping, whereas we're trying to deal with the existing lot.
Well, I think you're going to be dealing with this for a long time, regardless of what happens. I mean, if you require it in one place, why not in other? It seems inconsistent to me. All right. Mr. Gardner, are you still in the queue? You out? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to testify? Okay. Mr. Baltazar, your rebuttal. Anything you want to respond to what you've heard?
Oh, yeah. Regardless to the conics.
Why don't you pull the mic up for me? You can put it on that. There you go.
Okay. Regardless to the container, my container, they are in compliance. And you see a lot of shop equipment. All the materials is there in the back. It's gonna go inside the building. But if my building is not finished, I can put it back in. It's quite look a little bit messy, but it's something that's gonna be addressed because all the equipment is gonna go into the new building. It has been a little bit delayed, almost 6-7 months. At this point, we just try to deal the best we can. But yes, it's gonna be cleaned up. And we don't have any open case that we are breaking the law, doing something we're not supposed to be doing, like all train we could doing 6, 7, 8 months ago, a year. And we have been trying to do the best we can. Any question that you want to ask?
Any further questions for Mr. Baltazar? Thank you for your testimony. At this point, I'm going to close the public hearing. The public hearing is closed, and I'm going to ask that we take a 5-minute recess. Okay, we're going to start back up. Everybody here? Everybody's here. Okay, before I ask for a motion, I'm going to probably go back with some questions for staff. Mr. McLaughlin, on page 10, we have Exhibit A, and it shows the petition outlined in the dashed line, and there's 4 lots comprised there, right? Yeah. Those 4 lots are zoned what?
It's B3SL on the left-hand side of the solid black line, and then it's R2M on the right-hand side of that solid black line. It's split zoned.
And the SLs are on which page in the packet?
42. Oh, yeah, 42 of the packet is the existing special limitations from 2001.
So in 2001, there's a list of 17 uses, for lack of a better term, that are prohibited, including outdoor storage, basically any type of auto repair other than tire repair, wheel alignment, and brake service, motor vehicle display, new and used auto sales shops, a whole bunch of stuff, right? So we are expanding the zoning into an area currently that's R2M because it's split zoned, and we're increasing the allowed units, some of which, going back to 1984, and then again in 2001, were much more restrictive than what there are today. And this is on top of hearing concerns that the community council and at least the adjacent neighbor have for existing conditions. But I just want to make sure that's what we're doing.
Well, I don't think the department would view it in quite the way that you described it, but...
In what sense?
Well, so we have a recently adopted land use plan map. The Anchorage 2040 plan designates this property as town center, and an implementing district of the town center use category is the B3 district. So this rezone implements the plan by both eliminating the split zoning and showing what is in the 2040 plan as town center, implementing district B3. You are recommending, the department is recommending approval for the proposed rezoning, which brings the property into conformance with the 2040 plan. Also, you know, the fact that some of these special limitations existed 17 years ago is a result of the fact that we had very few landscaping and use-specific standards, very few site design requirements in the old code, whereas the new code, there are many more restrictions placed on these types of developments. Now, the B3 district, if you look at the table of allowed uses, it is a permitted by right, if you have B3 property, to have a parking lot. It is a permitted by right to have vehicle service and repair minor and major. All of these are permitted by right uses.
Francis, but we're changing the zoning here. We're changing it from an existing SL where there are prohibited uses. So to compare what you can do under generic B3 and what the existing zoning is irrelevant. We're talking about something that's zoned a certain way for a reason. For what reason? I don't know. I can read the packet like everybody else. There's a number of special limitations in the tract to the east of this site, or to the west of this site, because they're deemed not conducive to town center. Many of the same things that are listed in this existing zoning. That's town center. I'm not quite getting the town center argument.
Well, I thought to speak to the town center because when Ms. Wood testified, she cited sort of an old black and white staff report from the planning department that I guess was critical of automotive repair in a town center. And what I have to look at today is that the most recently adopted plan in the municipality designates this as a town center. The very first implementing district of a town center in that plan is the B3, and then the B3 in a generic table of allowed uses allows all these uses as permitted by right, nothing that he has to ask for permission to do at all.
Yeah, but we're looking at existing conditions.
It is a change, as you've stated.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Can I get a motion in the matter of case 2018-89, request to rezone B3SL and R2M to B3SL in Muldoon? I need a motion to discuss, or I need a motion to postpone, one or the other. Ms. Bailey.
I will move to recommend approval of the rezone from B3SL, subject to the two limitations outlined on page 7.
Seconded by Mr. Gardner. Go ahead, Ms. Bailey.
Mostly I'm just moving this for approval to start conversation. I am very concerned that there are code enforcement issues on this, and that it appears as though it's a property that has current special limitations, and those limitations are not being followed, and now we're removing those limitations. However, on the other side, it does appear to address some of the major concerns of the community members, specifically the planning department's special limitations do address the community council concerns. I just still have some further concerns about the fact that it does not appear like the current code violations are being addressed completely.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Mr. McLaughlin, is that you or that from before?
Oh, no, it's new. Just a comment on Ms. Bailey's expressed concerns. I think that Mr. Strike stated it really succinctly when he said, complaints about enforcement actions of the past is not necessarily related to, zoning. This meeting here is about elimination of the split zoning and updating the special limitations, implementing the comprehensive plan.
We've heard that, Francis, but here's the thing. We're expanding the ability of the use, and if there are any existing code issues, it is relevant. I would completely disagree with you. It's completely relevant. So we can call something a town center all day long. It doesn't make it a town center. It's a quasi-industrial use going on here in the middle of Muldoon. And a neighbor on one side saying we've got an issue, and a brand new park on the other. So that's the level of confidence that I personally have. So where I'm at right now is I'm not going to support it until I know for certain that there would be additional buffering to the park, and I would know for certain that there's no existing code issues. I'm not saying bring things up to current B3 code. I'm saying code enforcement issues. Have an inspection, see if it is. I look at it, and I'm amazed if those are the pictures that there aren't code issues involved in those pictures. If there aren't, then I don't understand the code, because I get written up for a lot less than that. So that's where I'm at right now. I don't feel comfortable with the case as presented, but I'm just one vote. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Ms. Bailey.
A question more than a comment. Procedurally, moving forward, if this motion were to not pass, what would then be the process for this applicant moving forward to try to upgrade the property, have more code compliance versus us postponing this issue, giving the applicant more time to address some of the current code violations before we address expanding a B3 use.
Through the chair, Ms. Bailey, that's a good question. I hadn't quite prepared for some of those options, but so the commission has the ability to continue to a future meeting or postpone. It also has the ability to recommend a denial or recommendation of approval or recommendation of approval with special limitations. If the commission recommends denial, then I would ask that you state whether it's with prejudice or without prejudice. If it's with prejudice, then they're sunk they can't reapply for essentially the same application for, it's a year or two, whatever the code says. 2 years, thank you, 2 years. So that's just a clarification maybe for future cases and that sort of thing about prejudice versus.
I'm not sure I understand. I've never heard that term before.
Yeah, it's in code, and it's something in the new code that having to do with if the commission recommends denial, then because the commission makes a recommendation, if the applicant doesn't ask an assembly person to introduce the case at the assembly level and push it to the assembly because it doesn't automatically go to the assembly. If they don't do that, then within 60 days or however many days, then your recommendation for denial becomes a denial. It's something in the new code. And so the commission actually becomes the deciding factor if the case isn't pushed to the assembly by the applicant. One part to that section of code is it speaks to if a recommendation for denial is made with prejudice, then they have to wait 2 years. And so if you don't comment on whether it's with prejudice or without prejudice, then we have to guess that it is with prejudice.
Maybe one of our attorneys on here can tell me what that means. What is with prejudice or without prejudice?
I can take a stab.
Yeah.
Well, as I understand it from here, so in the legal context, with prejudice means that you're out of luck in the future entirely. And from here, as I understand it here, it's not that you're out of luck forever, it's just you're out of luck for 2 years, and you need to wait before you can get a second shot.
So your point is, Mr. McLaughlin, if that's what we were going to say, to make that clear in our decision, which could be varied, but okay. Are you still in the queue, Danielle?
And I think one more thing I want to know the difference between denying versus a postponement, the effects that'll have on the applicant as far as if it's a denial and they go again, they have to do a whole new application versus if it's a postponement, they can still work within the process.
If you ask the applicant to return through, say, a postponement, then you'd have to give them clear direction on, why you were postponing. Denial is a pretty serious thing because, then the applicant will be faced with: do they push this to the assembly with a recommendation of denial from this commission? Or will they not? If they don't, then the recommendation for a denial becomes the denial. If a decision, like if the assembly were to make it, they may feel like they're forced to push it to the assembly just to because it automatically becomes a denial. I guess you could recommend denial without prejudice, and then that would be clear that they could pay the fee to reapply and go through all this again, have another community meeting. But just a point of information, the community council recommended approval of this rezoning.
Francis, we know.
Okay.
I think where I'm at right now is I don't want to cause additional burden on the applicant as far as a denial. And at this time, I'm probably going to be more likely to consider a postponement to specifically first address whether there are existing code enforcement violations, because it's kind of hard to predicated denial just based on one report, as opposed to, this seems to be something that should have been resolved, hopefully could have been resolved by staff ahead of time, so we knew whether there were code enforcement violations or not. And then the second issue would be to possibly look into, since this is expanding a B3 use, whether the current B3 use and making this not a split zone but a cohesive property should have buffering on the north and south end of the property. I think that's where I'm leaning at this time. However, I'm still open to additional insight.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Mr. Strike.
I would say Commissioner Bailey just took the wind out of my sails there. That's exactly where I think we should be going here. I could get behind that motion. I think and I would ask the chair that the way to move forward, if we were to go that way, would be to have the current motion pulled off the table.
You can just make a motion to postpone. You can leave the original motion on the table, because what you're doing is you're postponing that motion to approve it until a later point.
Say that again.
You don't need to pull the motion. If there's a motion to postpone, that can supersede anything.
But the important piece here, as Commissioner Bailey pointed out and as staff pointed out, that we have to give clear direction to the applicant as to what we are looking for. And for that, I think you touched, Commissioner Bailey, on the two of the points. Are there any others that should be identified? And pertinent to that was the special limitations of expanding the visual enhancements beyond just that abutted the R3. I think that's where you were going with that. And whether or not that can be included in the additional special limitation. But for that, we would need staff to work with the applicant to bring forth a new suggestion to us. I mean, if they can read between the lines that there is a reluctance by this body to approve this tonight, but for giving you another bite at the apple to come back and after our postponement. So with that, I would move that we postpone the decision on this case until such time as staff and the applicant can further meet and discuss, and then we will address what the specifics of the, as a body, what the specifics of the request that we're asking for, if that passes.
So can you hit motion to postpone? Is there a second on? Can you get that button? And then is there a second? Okay, that's seconded. Would you like to help provide that specific direction to that postponement? It doesn't have to be you, Mr. Strike, but anybody in particular?
No, but I appreciate the same wording that Ms. Bailey used. So.
Okay, Ms. Bailey, can we go to you?
The two main things that I would be looking for would first be for staff to resolve whether or not there are any existing code enforcement, any code violations that are currently there. And also, if there are currently, I'm not sure, it sounds as though there may have been things brought to the code enforcement already, so maybe first check to see if there's any existing cases there, and then second, look into whether there are any additional code violations that may not have been reported. And then the other item I would like to see addressed is, because we're expanding a B3 use, whether landscape buffering should be required on the north and or the south ends of the property, in addition to what appears to be was a buffering on the east and the west side of the property.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yeah, I don't know that we can't make a recommendation or deal with this this evening. The two concerns I heard from Ms. Bailey were the landscaping, and so I guess we can look at the property lines, and I want to know what questions you have about landscaping, because I believe that I can answer them. The other question about code enforcement, I fully believe that there were code enforcement cases in the past that the neighbor, the dentist's office, had complained about. I don't believe there are any existing code enforcement cases that are pending against Mr. Balthazar. You could ask him directly right now. I'm sure that he would like to respond to the accusation that there are code enforcement violations that he's somehow violating the code. I walked the site twice personally, walked all through it, and I didn't see any code violations. Now, there are several connexes that were well kept and ordered, and they were closed and had, were locked up. I didn't see any junk on the property. It's devoid of landscaping, so it's mostly dirt and it's not pretty, but I did not see any code violations that I witnessed because that was one of my concerns too. And I go to that park almost daily, and I think that, I think it would be a little sideways to postpone the case based on an accusation.
Mr. McLaughlin, you're totally, you're out of order, man. This is not your hearing. We're asking you questions. We expect you to be able to respond to the questions. But that's it.
Okay.
What I heard is not whether there's a code violation out there right now, but whether someone can ascertain, can go look at the property and confirm from code enforcement that there are no existing code issues out there right now. Number two, I think I heard that given that there's drive aisles and other things, so it's not a parking lot, which you would have to buffer a parking lot, but there's drive aisles running alongside of the building between this property and the other B3 property. That warrants some sort of treatment of some kind. And so I think a closer look at what the surrounding perimeter of the entire site ought to look like, given the uses that are there, is what I'm going to look at.
Well, just to respond, Mr. Robinson, your points are well taken. There is, my understanding, a positive relationship between the American Legion post and their neighbor, Mr. Balthazar's tire shop. So I think that he allows them to drive through his property to get to the back of their lot and vice versa. The portion where the dentist office is a minority of that lot line.
There is nothing in this proposal other than a little bit of landscaping on the front of Muldoon Road that enhances what this property looks like from Muldoon Road and how it feels like a changing commercial area. So all I'm saying is I think we ought to look at the site and look at a site that's expanding a use and eliminating a significant number of uses that are currently prohibited. And all he has to do is provide a little bit of landscaping on Muldoon.
Well, it's the decision of the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Or I'm going to call the question. The motion is to postpone is on the table. Mr. McLaughlin, you back in there?
No.
The case is postponed. We assume that the public hearing is closed and that you all will bring it back when you've looked at the two issues that we talked about here this evening. Next up, case 2018-94, Municipality of Anchorage, review and recommendation by Planning and Zoning Commission to the Assembly of Public Facility Site Selection for the Anchorage Police Department, generally located on south of West 4th, west of G, north of West 5th, and east of H in downtown. Can we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Anchorage Police Department seeks approval of the public facility site selection of a new police station headquarters in accordance with the public facility site selection part of code in Title 21. There was a needs assessment conducted, an analysis of site alternatives. In regards to the approval criteria under H, the first approval criteria, whether the site will allow development that is compatible with the current and projected land uses, the criterion is met. The commercial land uses and zoning surrounding the site 716 West 4th Avenue building are compatible with the police department. The B2B Central Business District Intermediate allows police stations as a permitted by right use, and the surrounding land uses would actually benefit from the proximity of an APD headquarters. In regards to approval criteria number 2, whether the site is large enough to accommodate the proposed use and future additions or another planned public facility, the criterion is also met. APD needs a minimum of 50,000 square feet of floor space, and the 716 West 4th Avenue building provides 62,120 square feet, which is more than enough for the current needs and allows for space for growth in accordance with this standard. Approval criteria number 3, whether the proposed government use and its intensity is compatible with the surrounding district and adopted policies for future development of the district. The criterion is met. Anchorage 2020 has 4 policies that deal with that are applicable to this criterion and how the comp plan is furthered by the relocation of APD headquarters to this location. Policy 18 of Anchorage 2020 says strengthen the central business district's role as the regional center of commerce, services, finance, arts and culture, and government offices. This, of course, is a type of government office. Policy 19, locate municipal, state, and federal administrative offices in the central business district. This is a municipal administrative office. Policy 23, major employment centers shown in the land use policy map exist in downtown. The key characteristic of this criterion or of this Anchorage 2020 policy is that it calls for the, quote, the centralization of medium to high density office development with employment densities of more than 50 employees per acre. The new APD headquarters would contain approximately 150 employees, and this site has 0.7 acres, which is 214 employees per acre. So it's exceeding that minimum set by this policy. The site is consistent with both the Downtown Comprehensive Plan and Anchorage 2040 land use plan map, which identify the site as downtown core and city center, respectively. The Downtown Comprehensive Plan states that the planning area should build upon its strength as a hub of government offices, amenities, and diversity. The Anchorage 2040 land use plan map states that the downtown core is the most active and intense part of the city center, creating a concentration of office, civic, cultural, entertainment, housing, and retail uses, all within close proximity. The 716 West 4th Avenue building has sat vacant since 2014. Filling the building with the APD headquarters is supported by these plans and will provide a big boost to the central business district. Approval criteria 4, whether adequate utility and transportation infrastructure is available at the site. The criterion is met, the site is fully built and with adequate utilities and transportation infrastructure already installed. Approval criteria 5, whether the site is located near a transit route. The criterion is met. There are 3 public transit routes located within walking distance, and also within walking distance of the downtown transit center. Approval criteria 6, whether there are existing and planned walkways connecting the site to transit stops surrounding residential uses. The building entrance abuts a public sidewalk, and you can go in all 4 directions. There's good pedestrian access. Approval criteria 7, environmental suitability of the site. The site is suitable for the intended use and will not pose a risk to any sensitive environmental features. Approval criteria 8, APD, so the financial feasibility of the site, including maintenance and operations. The APD has already budgeted money to lease the site and will not require additional funding. APD's potential lease of the building from the Anchorage Community Development Corporation is contingent on the site being selected by the Assembly. But it's important to point out that no lease has been signed to date. This is a recommendation that the Commission would make to the Assembly, and there's no foregone conclusions here. Nothing's been signed. This process is important. Approval criteria 9, whether the proposed site for major municipal, state, and federal administrative offices conforms to the adopted policy priorities for locating in the central business district. This criteria is met. Relocating the APD headquarters to the central business district conforms to Anchorage 2020. Relocating APD headquarters to downtown will improve public safety and support revitalization of downtown. The Downtown Community Council had no objection to the APD headquarters moving to this site. The department finds that the approval criteria for public facility site selection is met. Therefore, the department is recommending approval of the relocating the APD headquarters to this to the preferred recommended site in this site selection. The Commission makes a recommendation to the Assembly. Attached is a draft Assembly resolution that's on page 6 and 7 of your packet. Thank you. Also, the author of the public facilities site selection is here, acting as the applicant in this. So Ms. McNulty, I think, is also prepared to make a presentation. Yeah.
Before I go, Greg, just just don't get too into it with staff before we open it up with Robin. But go ahead, just questions just to staff, yeah.
And since we've got a pretty
Yeah.
wide audience here. After 5 years on the commission, I do not recall ever having seen in the planning development a need for a new police station headquarters identified. I understand the process by which they're looking to expand, but in the past, it's always been for commercial to do the records retention. You made mention that this is not a foregone conclusion. There is no lease signed. Okay, good. We have that on the record. Conversations in the community would dictate otherwise, that this is a foregone conclusion, that this is happening. And we also review the police budget. Now, our job isn't to review budgets, but we do go look at the fire department's budget, the school district's budget, and we look at different capital plans and so forth. And again, the headquarters building was never identified in any of the items that were presented before this commission. APD has already budgeted the money to lease this site. Again, we're not the financial arm. We're not going to manage how they're doing their budgeting and so forth, but I'm surprised we don't have an audience out here talking about this, because this has been a conversation in the community. But I just want to get these out on the open. It does seem like we are being asked to come in at the 11:30 hour to stamp an approval for a process that is so far down the road that we're just dotting the I's and crossing the T's at this stage. And for that, I got a little problem with that. Now, I'm going to get back in the program here and listen to petitioner and so forth, and I just wanted to get that out on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strike. Seeing no further questions for staff, what I'm going to do is open the public hearing and invite Ms. Ward to speak if you would like to. Otherwise, we'll see if Mr. Potter's out there wanting to talk or just listen. And then we'll close the...
Do you want me to...
So, Michelle, you have a presentation as well?
Just briefly, staff did a really good job at kind of outlining the site selection process. I would just like to add that myself and Chief Dahl did attend the Downtown Community Council meeting. We were met with a lot of support. The business owners would like to see the police headquarters down there. I think we all probably know the reasons why, but as soon as possible, they see it as integral to the revitalization of the downtown area, as well as just having more of a security presence in the area. And also just speak to a few things that Mr. Strike brought up. I just maybe want to clarify that it's not been that there's been a need for the headquarters. It's been more of a need for commercial and warehouse space for the evidence collections. Through looking at various expansion options outside of their Elmore facility, as well as looking at available lands to meet their needs, because of cost and availability, there wasn't a lot forthcoming. So when the opportunity presented itself to look at a different option and kind of flipping the equation and taking headquarters out of it, and then opening up Tudor Road for more space, that became the path that was taken. As far as timing, I understand your concern about looks like we're just dotting our I's and crossing our T's. A lot of it has to do with the timing of the process. The police department has an urgent need to make something happen. There's a lot of evidence spread throughout the community. They don't have the space available to bring in overtime employment or employees because there's not the office space. So they have a growing police force because of our growing crime. And so their immediate need and the length of time that it takes to go through the site selection study, meaning the doing the actual work, noticing the community council, going out and doing the presentation, and then getting the application into the subsequent public hearing, put them on the heels of one another. We do understand and recognize your point, though, about how that looks. And then just the budget for the lease, I just want to clarify, it wasn't that they had predisposed budget for this specific lease. It's that when the opportunity arose, they figured out how much it would be for the remainder of the year. They had it within their budget to to put the lease, to pay for the lease. Part of that will come out of just savings that they've seen through the year, and then also the consolidation of some of the evidence room and giving up that space. So I just want to be clear on when we're talking about the budget for the lease that it was not a line item, but money that was found and can be reappropriated for the lease. Unless Robin has anything to add.
And since that rebutted some of my comments, nowhere over the last 3 years did APD come out with an RFP seeking out to lease warehouse space and put forth into the community. So that was never put forth on the street. Otherwise, contractors, developers would come forth and develop plans, just like they did for DHHS, et cetera, to build the facility where they would own it and lease it to the city for that purpose. So that was never an option, but now we're finding they can come up with the lease money now. So this has been tailored a bit, and we're well down the road on this. And further, the Downtown Community Council, yes. In fact, I believe they are all for this. But where the police station's moving out of may not be. The University District, et cetera, and South Anchorage District, they would love to have the police department move into their areas for the same crime prevention and visibility that downtown wants. But again, I know why we're here. I just don't like how we got here so quickly without going through the full process. Again.
Thank you.
Mr. McLaughlin's in the queue. You back?
I just wanted to comment that, APD needs a lot of space. It's not just any old building that they could go into. And all of our comprehensive plan calls for major government offices to be located in downtown. So if it was being proposed outside of the downtown core, then you'd probably be seeing a different recommendation coming from the department. I was a little bit surprised by the comment that this is like the first that people had heard about APD's critical need for more storage space. APD has been floating with the planning department for over a decade, or about a decade. I mean, for a long time, different proposals on where they could find new storage space for evidence. At least twice there have been proposals that have been brought to the planning department about buildings for evidence storage.
But they never presented it to the community to put an RFP on the street to go out there for bid and lease that space. They were going to build their own, issue a bond, and build, and where that would be to build that facility.
But Mr. Strike, where in downtown would there be a space for, that sort of area?
That what you're talking
that
about,
amount of square
we're
footage
talking about
available.
two different pieces: headquarters versus the storage facility. And now we're splitting those two. And the downtown area being the place for government operations and business. Well, let's go back 20 years and look at the amount of time that we spent to move the police department out of downtown. We spent considerably sums of monies to move them out because they wanted to be moved out of downtown. Yes, things change and things evolve, and the crime statistics, everything else moving off the table. Yeah, who doesn't want substations? Well, this isn't a substation. This is a new headquarters. And again, in the process was never to build a new headquarters. It was to build a storage facility for their evidence. But it changed when this building became available. Everything changed for the needs and the requirements. Let's take our existing headquarters, turn it into the storage evidence, and move the headquarters back downtown. That discussion's only happening because a single building became available. That's why we're here tonight, because a single building became available, and for whatever reason. How we got here is the process I don't like. I think we may end up with the right solution. I didn't like the process by which how we got here.
I see your point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strike. I am going to open the public hearing. So, Ms. Ward, you are the petitioner. You have 10 minutes or more. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions. So
I won't need that much.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commission members. Mr. Strike, through the chair, you're exactly right. You are. In fact, it wasn't being considered until this opportunity rose. The chief of police and I recognized it as an opportunity But we would never have put out an RFP to build a building because we could never have gotten it at this price. I mean, that really is. The opportunity is that it is a building downtown that was built for government that we, the Anchorage Community Development Authority, purchased for half the note price at the bank, which brought the lease the investment down, therefore the lease price for the APD to a point where they could actually consider moving headquarters. It was never anticipated before. So that's the reason there is no RFP. And frankly, we wouldn't have done an RFP because we wouldn't have been able to have afforded another building downtown to have been built today. So it was a very unique opportunity. I absolutely agree. And we are here because of that opportunity. We do believe it is the right thing to do. Did we go through the formal process? No, because that opportunity didn't even exist 10 months ago. So you're absolutely right.
And for clarity, the RFP I spoke to is not for the headquarters, but was for the storage, the warehouse, and the evidence storage facility.
And frankly, as I looked for the last 2 years for them, and even existing buildings, we couldn't have replaced any of the existing buildings for something they could afford. We just frankly couldn't afford it.
The one building that comes to mind for the storage facility that was brought up was actually the DHHS building that was being looked at. I think you've cut a deal with another developer for some trade outs, but that building was touted as a possibility for that before that even came about. So there were, and quite frankly, I'm not going to get into the semantics of where it should be. That's your area. Right. But, developers own land, other developers, it could be privatized, it could have been leased for that facility, similar to what you're doing now, other than that now the city owns the building, or a city agency owns the building.
Enterprise, yes.
So we got to the right point. It's just the process.
I fully understand exactly where you're coming from, and I'm not denying any of that. It was an opportunity. What can I say? We have heard issues about the building. It's taking it off the tax rolls. It's actually not. ACDA pays what's called MISA, which is the Municipal Enterprise Special Assessment, and it is almost equal to what the private sector taxes are. So APD actually is paying that. This is a triple net lease, which is being proposed. And by the way, it hasn't been signed because it hasn't been to the assembly yet, so it's not a foregone conclusion. But it is not actually being taken off of the tax rolls. However, it would have been if LIO had moved in. They don't pay MISA. So at least we are still getting property taxes. And so we feel like this really is the right thing. It may be a little bit of a messy process to get here. So, and basically, I'll just answer any questions and leave the rest for rebuttal.
Thank you. Other questions? Ms. Bailey.
I'm not sure if this is a question for you as the petitioner or for staff, but it kind of gets to one of the approval criteria, and I'm wondering if there are, it's the issue of transportation, if there's adequate transportation for this. And I am not that knowledgeable about the transportation requirements of a police headquarters. And I work downtown in the next building, and I'm wondering, there's only one way in and out of that parking lot. Is that going to be a problem for police responding to incidents, or is it not going to be an issue because they're already going to be dispatched to different areas? So I think my first is question, and maybe it's for you, maybe it's for staff.
I can answer that.
Is that area adequate? And then the second would be, is an approval criteria of asking about response times an issue here? Because I thought that was kind of interesting that wasn't one of the approval criteria, but it seems very relevant to me. So.
Well, through the chair, can I try first?
Sure.
Okay. Through the chair, Ms. Bailey, there are 3 general different types of police employees. There's about 130 employees that are detectives, administrative. Those are the ones that will be moving into the building, and they will be occupying the parking spaces underneath and in the secure parking lot. Another group, there's about 400, little over 400 employees, so that's about 130. There's about 160 patrol cars. They don't work out of anywhere. They have no desk. They do shift changes, but they're out all the time. About 3/4 of those at all times are out on the road. So their response time is based on where they're patrolling in their district at any point in time. So a response time is not really an issue of where the headquarters is. It's not today, and it won't be downtown, because the employees that are there all day long are detectives and admin and administrative leadership type managers. But the patrol will, however, trade out sometimes downtown. They'll do their shift changes and briefings downtown, but they do that all over town. The other group of employees are dispatch, records, evidence. They're all staying at the old headquarters building, and they're consolidating all of their offices to make room for all of the other internal evidence that needs to be stored there. So they'll be remodeling that building. So transportation should actually not be an issue. They don't anticipate it to be an issue.
And then a follow-up question along with the transportation there. It definitely meets my concerns about response time.
Right.
And then just another concern, again, this could be more direct to planning staff, maybe you as well. As far as just downtown traffic itself, I don't think Anchorage really, like some people say we have a traffic problem. We don't really have a traffic problem. But downtown gets bottlenecked 2 times a day. Is an influx of cars doing shift changes going to be happening at those peak times?
No, shift changes are at 7 in the morning. They are at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and there's a small shift change at 11 p.m.
Thank you.
Mr. Strike.
Thank you, and thanks, Ms. Bailey, for your questions. One more thought as you go into this, because this building wasn't designed and built for a police headquarters. Any thoughts on force protection standards and how you're going to, or are you going to be looking at force protection upgrades to the building required?
Through the chair, Mr. Strike, that is not required for the staff that is going to be there. That's more required for the evidence and the records, which is already a hardened building, but they do not believe they need to harden this building. There's very few remodeling issues there. They have to harden the first floor for the public coming in. So it'll be one area for their entrance and reception that has to be hardened. Other than that, the rest of it actually works very well. It is a series of offices on lots of floors.
Well, the fact that it's glass, as much glass as there is, I don't know that that was force protection glass that was in place. And Ms. Bailey mentioned the thing about the issue about the parking, and there's only one entrance and exit and so forth. And so you would never see that on a federal building. You would never see that built today in a government building structure because of the force protection issues. So
But it was built for a government building.
it wasn't. The parking garage was already in place, and these are temporary legislative offices, not the Capitol. So they were interim offices during the course of period.
Thank you, Mr. Strike. Any other questions before I go to the public hearing? Robin, real quick, 62,120 square feet for how many employees?
There's about 130. That is the basement. There's 54,903 net leasable space that are used for offices. The rest of it are boiler rooms. There's an entire basement that's basically unfinished that they'll use for interrogation rooms, things like that. But it's actually about 54 net leasable. 62 is everything.
54,000. But 54,000 still seems big for 130 employees. Is it not? I mean, maybe I'm just jammed into our office.
You're jammed into your office.
90 people and 24,000 square feet. Can I ask you about ownership? So ownership, I mean, the municipality has leased buildings now all over the city.
Yes, we do.
Is that what we ought to be doing?
That is not our first choice. We had no choice on this. In order to respond quickly to the opportunity to purchase this, there is a charter amendment that requires that any long-term purchase sale over $1 million requires a vote of the people. So we would not have been able to respond to this. So ACDA, who is a authority, a subdivision of the municipality, is set up to be a nonprofit, which was really the perfect choice for them to actually purchase that and then turn around and lease it to the municipality. However, our proposed lease does have a first right of refusal in it. If that charter ever changes, or if the debt ever gets paid off, then we would be able to have the first right to actually purchase that from ACDA.
So, I mean, the clause is actually, if the debt is actually retired, yes, then there's an automatic option for
we
purchase.
have the option to purchase it from them. Yes. They are basically our financing opportunity there.
And how much, I mean, how much is sort of, given that there's a relationship with ACDA, I mean, how much sort of profit, in addition to just costs of paying for the debt and the upkeep of the building, are they earning off of the ongoing lease payment from APD?
They do have a small profit. That is part of their policy, and that was one of the things that their board required.
Okay.
It's not huge.
Should we feel good about that as taxpayers?
Well, they turn around and pay taxes in MESA, and their taxes are based on all of their enterprises and the money they make.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. At this point, I'm going to open the public hearing. Mr. Potter, are you testifying? We can make this real quick or not.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I can be just as skeptical as Mr. Strike, maybe even more so sometimes. And with as many clients I have that were interested in this deal, and that they were not in the game and everything else, looking at it and what I know of the police department, having participated in several planning sessions to get ready for asking the state for additional money and or bonds to do additional development at the current headquarters building and meeting the expansion needs. As skeptical as I might be about everything, this was an opportunity. This was an insane good deal. This is the next door neighbor to Greg Strike, whose wife maybe has loved the house next door and has always wanted to buy it. And the old lady dies, and the kids live in Florida and don't know what it's worth and everything else, and offer it to him, or he goes and offers and says, geez, you know, I'll give you $100,000. And they go, God, that's a lot of money. I'll take it. You know, the building was worth about $34 to $36 million. Maybe a little bit more. At the closing, it was really down at 18, and the city got it for 14. And all you have to do is run it through your brain every which way you can and go, it's a deal and an opportunity that you just can't walk away from the city standpoint. And sometimes the system just has to take a big sigh and say, this is just too good a deal. And because it's such a good deal, it makes sense to do 3 different things to have the right outcome. So, you know, I just want to say that I think it's a great location. The building's going to be serviceable. Will it have a positive impact on downtown? Yeah, it will. Was the LIO going to be paying property taxes? No. Is there an overall benefit to the community? Absolutely. And the only reason we're here so far after the horse got out of the barn and is 2 states away is because of the opportunity that happened and basically the forfeiture of probably $20 million of some local investors in an outside bank. So the community wins, and I think we can move forward. I recommend approval.
Thank you. Man, you nailed that time-wise. Ms. Bailey's got a question for you.
My question actually isn't for Mr. Potter, so if anyone has questions for Mr. Potter, I
Any
guess
questions
I should.
for Mr. Potter?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Just because the process of this one is a little different than that we are potentially going to be recommending approval and approving the resolution at one time, there were a couple amendments I wanted to make, or I would consider making to the resolution, because I think they more adequately recommend the findings that I see, and I wanted to present them now and see if the staff or the petitioner had any objections. Specifically to items 2 and 3, am going to be considering looking to amend item 2.
So these really are our findings.
Yeah.
So I would rather you do that while we have a motion to approve and you make them as findings, and Francis is there to kind of grab them, and unless there's objections from others on those findings, then we'll kind of deal with it then. So does that work?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it's not going to create later hangups in preventing this from moving forward.
We can talk about it then,
Okay.
but I'd rather just, so we do it once, you get your findings out there while we have a motion on board. So is there any other questions for staff or Ms. Ward on the site selection case or procedurally? Because I think what we're going to do is make a motion to, approve the recommendation, make those findings associated with it, vote on the resolution, and then we're gonna pull up or vote on the case, and then we're gonna pull up the resolution, and we're gonna make sure those findings are consistent with the findings we actually made. They still have to be consistent with the record. And we can't, think of it no different than it is normally, right? It just happens to be one after the other. Yeah, I will. So hearing that, I'd like to close the public hearing. And what is the will of the body? Mr. Strike.
And the reason I did that was because I was so outspoken at the beginning, but I would like to move to approve case 2018-0094, the public facility site selection for approval.
Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Looney. Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Strike?
No, the end result here is a absolute gem of an opportunity for the city. And while we talked about selection, I think why we're here now is to facilitate this site selection through, and I think that the staff has done an excellent job in identifying the criteria and meeting the requirements. I know that Ms. Bailey does have some items that she has, but I will leave it at that so we can move on.
Thank you. Ms. Bailey.
I'll be voting to approve this as well. Specifically, I think it meets the public facility site selection approval criteria. It is compatible with the current projected land uses, downtown being one of our government cores for public buildings. Also, that it is large enough to accommodate the proposed use, that the square footage seems to be large enough, and as Mr. Robinson commented, that even if we were to put additional people in there and it were to expand in the future, it would still accommodate them. The proposed government use and intensity is compatible with the surrounding district. Another issue that was addressed specifically was whether there's adequate utility, transportation, or infrastructure. I did have an initial concern about whether there would be transportation issues with either too much congestion downtown or with dispatch, but all of those concerns were met, and it does appear that there is adequate infrastructure available and that the headquarters would be appropriate. It is located near the bus transit routes, and because this building was built for legislative offices, this, again, makes some of these criteria easy, but the existing planned walkways are already there. I think one thing that was addressed is the financial feasibility of the site and the maintenance is that this is a new building. It was built for legislative purposes. It came up and it was really the great deal of the building that spurred this. And so it's nice to know that we're if we're creating new headquarters, it's being done so in a economic way. Yeah, I think that's all my findings.
So what I gleaned from your findings, and I can ask for others as well, but sort of there's a lack of a finding on the actual specific criteria. So I heard you just say specifically that it meets the approval criteria. More specifically, we'd like to see that as a finding. And I would say, and specifically including the transportation, the adequacy of the transportation system. And then the other one was sort of different that I don't see embedded in those 5 is the idea about it from a feasibility standpoint, that this does seem like a good financial opportunity for the municipality and APD. Those would be the sort of the 2 that I heard you state that aren't explicitly on those 5.
Yes, and if I was going to, I think you could, to address one, my comments that were to amend the resolution would be to create minor amendments to items 2 and 3. I would say that APD has a critical need for additional space for its 150 regular full-time administrative staff, 3 shifts of patrol officers, and evidence storage. And so it's addressing the fact that they want additional space in general. It wasn't that initially they were looking for headquarters space. I think that captures the fact that they were looking for space in general, and it may have modified. And then I would have amended 3 to start off by saying a unique financial opportunity to move the headquarters downtown presented itself, and that in evaluating other opportunities, a search for potential sites, and then continue 3 as stated. And I think that more accurately reflects the process that this presented here.
Those are your findings, so if you'd like to make those findings, I have no objection to those. Any objection to the findings, the clarifications? I mean, I know we'll need a little help probably when we get to the resolution, but it's fine by me. Any additional findings to what we see here, the 5 that we have? Or anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Okay, let's vote. Okay, so next up is Resolution 2018-24 related to Case 2018-94. This is a resolution related to the site selection. And we have in front of us, if you saved your resolutions from earlier, the draft resolution. And Ms. Bailey has indicated a desire to amend 2 and 3, stated that with her findings, and I'm okay with it. Francis, would you like those stated again?
Mr. Chair, what did you want me to state?
So Ms. Bailey is going to walk you through number 2 and then number 3.
I think number 2 should be stated, APD has a critical need for additional, and then eliminate office. And space for its 150 regular full-time administrative staff, eliminate plus. And then after officers, and evidence storage. And then I would amend 3 to start off that finding with a unique financial opportunity to move headquarters downtown presented itself. A financial opportunity. Presented itself, period. And then in evaluating other options, space, delete the and replace it with a.
All right. Can we have a motion to approve the resolution? Thank you, Mr. Strike, seconded by Ms. Bailey. Any comments on the resolution? Any objections to passing the resolution? Okay, hearing none, the resolution is approved. Motion to adjourn would be great. Whoa, oh, what happened? Oh, okay. Next meeting is, where is it? October 1st, and there is a work session at 5:30. It's a ASD CIP. It's Mr. Strike's favorite time of the year. And and then there's just a park master plan on that one. So there's only one case on each of the 2 October meetings, so they should be pretty quick meetings. Okay, motion to adjourn? Oh, we were trying. Make your motion. Motion by Mr. Strike. Can we get a second? Meeting's adjourned. Thanks.
I think that's like the lowest power meeting thing ever. I had it plugged in the whole